Hello and welcome to Byjus Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into our daily quiz. Before we start with the practice questions for the day, we have an announcement. As part of our Target Prelims 2023, our today's session would be how to prepare for science and environment in under 90 days. What is that you have to do? Attend this session live on a YouTube at 8 p.m. so that you can ask the questions, get your questions answered by Harshmeet Singh sir, and all your queries will also be resolved with respect to science and environment. So what are you waiting for? Join us live at 8 p.m. so that you get all your answers for your questions. Let's get started and look into the first question. Consider the following statement. Electoral bond would be a bearer instrument in the nature of a promissory note and an interest-free banking instrument. No limit exists on the number of electoral bonds that a person, including corporate entities, can purchase. The amount of bonds not encashed within the validity period of 30 days shall be deposited by the authorized bank to the Prime Minister Relief Fund. Which of the statements given above are correct? The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Indian Express makes a reference to the electoral bond, which is why we have taken this practice question. Let us try and understand what are these statements. The first statement reads, electoral bond would be a bearer instrument in the nature of a promissory note and an interest-free banking instrument. This statement happens to be the right statement. When we speak about electoral bond, what is it? It happens to be a financial instrument. This is where individuals, corporate bodies would be able to make donations to the political parties. The first time it was proposed back in the year 2017 and 18 Union Budget by the Finance Minister. So according to the electoral bond scheme, electoral bond is a bond which is issued in the nature of a promissory note, and yes, it is an interest-free banking instrument. So the first statement is right. When you look into the bearer instrument, what is this bearer instrument? This is where a person's name would not be put up on this particular bond. Whosoever possesses this bond would be able to encash the money. So the first statement is right. When you look into the second statement, no limit exists on the number of electoral bonds that a person, including corporate entities, can purchase. Yes, this statement is also right. But when you look into the third statement, the amount of bonds not encashed within the validity period of 30 days, this is wrong, but instead it is 15 days. So if it is not encashed within 15 days, then that amount will be going to the Prime Minister Relief Fund. So the third statement is wrong. First and second statement are right. So the answer to this would be 1 and 2 only. Who can encash this cash? Only political parties which fulfill the following criteria are eligible to receive the electoral bonds. 1. Registered under Section 29A of the Representation of the People's Act of 1951 and secured not less than 1% of the votes polled in the last general elections to the House of the People or the Legislative Assembly, as the case may be. Only if they fit into this criterion, that is when they would be able to accept the electoral bond. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following statements are correct? Compensatory Afforestation Fund Act established a National Compensatory Afforestation Fund under the Consolidated Fund of India. The payments made for compensatory afforestation, net present value and others related to the project will be deposited in the fund. The state funds will receive 90% of the payments, while national fund will receive remaining 10%. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 2 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Indian Express makes a reference to the compensatory afforestation. Let us try and understand what is this concept of compensatory afforestation. As the very name denotes, it is afforestation that we are conducting, and at the same time there is compensation. What is this compensation? Let's say for example we have huge swathes of land with multiple diversity. There are huge number of trees. So whenever a forest is present and you have to divert this forest for a developmental activity, let's say for example there is a construction of dam that comes in that place, or there is a construction of a defense purpose project or any other developmental project. So what are we converting here? We are converting a forest for a non-forest purpose. So development is taking place in the forest area. So there is huge felling of the trees that is taking place as well. So once a forest is converted into a non-forest area, what we have to do is ensure that whosoever is developing this particular project, they would be asked to deposit a certain amount of money in the funds. Why? Because there is a loss of forest. So in this case, whosoever is developing that particular project, it can be a private entity or it can be the government in itself as well. So they have to deposit a certain amount of funds, and this fund is what is called as compensatory fund. So this fund will be used for bringing up another area of land where there will be huge number of trees that will be planted. So when you look into the first statement, Compensatory Afforestation Fund Act established a national compensatory afforestation fund under the Consolidated Fund of India. So this statement is wrong. Why? Because it is not the Consolidated Fund of India, but instead it is Public Account Fund. So remember, the first statement is wrong. When you look into the second statement, yes, the second statement is right. If you look into the CAMPA law, it promotes afforestation and developmental activities in order to compensate for forest land that is intended to be diverted to non-forest use, to lay down effective guidelines for the state, to facilitate necessary assistance in terms of scientific, technological and other requisites, recommend measures based on strategic planning, resolve issues that arise between interstate or center-state, and at the same time, the National Afforestation Fund under the Public Account of India and State Compensatory Afforestation Fund under the public account of each state. So it is not the Consolidated Fund of India. The state funds will receive 90% of the payments, while the national fund will receive about 10%. These are some of the important facts with respect to CAMPA. Now let's look into the next practice question. With respect to POCSO Act, which of the following statements are correct? The POCSO Act does not provide for any period of limitation for reporting the child sexual offences. The Act not only punishes the perpetrator of sexual abuse but also penalizes those who have failed to report the offence. POCSO Act prohibits disclosure of the victim's identity in any of the media. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Indian Express makes a reference to the POCSO Act. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement, the POCSO Act does not provide for any period of limitation for reporting the child sexual offences. This statement is right. What do we understand by this statement? Let's assume for a moment that there was one of the sexual offences that was committed on a child. Who is a child? Anyone who is less than 18 years of age. So a man or a woman might commit a sexual offense on a child. Here remember, when it comes to POCSO, it is a gender neutral law, which means to say it is applicable for both boys as well as the girls, and at the same time the perpetrator can be a man and it can also be a woman as well, which is why it is called as gender neutral law. So what if there is a particular crime that was committed, let's say 3 years back or 5 years back? Now the child has become a major, so the child would be able to say irrespective of the limitation period. When you say limitation period, it means within 1 year they have to say that, within 2 years they have to bring it out, within 3 years they have to confess it, so on and so forth. But when it comes to POCSO, there is no limitation, which means they can say whenever they wish to. So the first statement is right. The act not only punishes the perpetrator of sexual abuse but also penalizes those who have failed to report the offense. Let's say, for example, there is a person who knows that a sexual offense has been committed on a child who is less than 18 years of age. Such person who knows about such incident should also report the same to the police officers. In case he does not report, and if the government or the executive agency go on to understand that this person knew about it, even such person can be penalized as well. The third statement reads, POCSO Act prohibits disclosure of the victim's identity in any form of media. So we have section 23 of the POCSO Act. Yes, it prohibits disclosure of the victim, who that person is, where does he stay, who are his parents, what is that person's name, should not be given out by the media, because the society that we live in ostracizes such individuals. So to prevent and to safeguard the dignity of the child, there is media limitation that has been imposed. But if the permission of the special courts are taken, then they may be able to do it. But without the permission, they would not be able to reveal the name. So all the three statements are right. So the answer to this would be 1, 2, and 3. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following statements are correct? The date of holding the election to the office of Deputy Speaker is fixed by the President. Sardar Hukum Singh served as the first Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is none. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Indian Express makes a reference to the Deputy Speaker. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement, the date of holding the election of the office of the Deputy Speaker is fixed by the President. This statement is wrong. Why? That is because it is not by the President, but instead it is by the Speaker. So in Lok Sabha and state legislatures, the President and the Governor set the date for the election of the Speaker. So when it comes to the Speaker, it is the President who does it at the Lok Sabha. It is the Governor who does it at the State Assembly level. So President is for the Speaker. So they set the date for the Speaker. But when it comes to the Deputy Speaker, it is set by the Speaker. So the first statement is wrong. When you look into the second statement, Sardar Hukum Singh served as the first Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha. No. Who was the first Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha is what you have to put on the comment section. So remember, Sardar Hukum Singh was not the first Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha, but we have someone else. Who was it is what you have to put on the comment section. Now let's look into the next practice question. In the context of the Indian defense, what is Dhruv? Aircraft carrying warship, missile carrying submarine, advanced light helicopter, intercontinental ballistic missile. The answer to this is advanced light helicopter. This happens to be a previous year question from the year 2008. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is SWAMIH Fund. What does it stand for? It stands for Special Window for Affordable and Mid-Income Housing. This happens to be India's largest social impact fund, especially formed for completing all those stressed and stalled residential projects. So the fund is sponsored by the Ministry of Finance and is managed by SBI Cap Ventures Limited, which happens to be a state bank group company. So the aim of SWAMIH funds is to provide funding to the stalled projects that are net positive, including those projects that have been declared as non-performing assets or are pending proceedings before the National Company Law Tribunal under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. The investment fund will provide last mile funding to the stressed, affordable and middle income housing projects in the country. And do note, there are associated benefits with this fund. A large amount of capital is locked up in these projects, will be released once these homes are constructed and completed. It will provide employment to the construction workers. It will also provide impetus to the allied industries such as steel and element. It will significantly improve the economic sentiment in the nation and will also improve portfolios of banks and NBFCs. And as part of the assignment, you have to put on the comment section what category that it belongs to. We have the alternative investment fund. We have three categories: category 1, category 2, category 3, so on and so forth. To which category this fund belongs to is what you have to put on the comment section. So what is this alternative investment fund? In alternative investment fund, what we have is three categories. What are these categories? One is what is called as category 1 AIFs. These are invested in businesses that have the potential to grow financially. Let's say, for example, we have the startups, small and medium enterprises. All of these fall under the category 1 alternative investment. When we speak about category 2, this basically means that those funds which are invested in equity securities and debt securities are included as part of category 2. Then we have category 3, which are those funds which give returns under a short period of time. For example, hedge funds, private investment in public equity funds, so on and so forth. This belongs to which category is what you have to put on the comment section. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.